How's everybody? Are you warm enough? All right. No? Who said no? All right, come back tomorrow. It's going to be warmer, I think. So who's from Tennessee? Raise your hand if you're from Tennessee. All right, raise your hand if you drove more than 10 hours to get here. Dang. How about 12 hours? Drove more than 12. All right, yell out if you're one of those people. How far did you drive? Farther than that, 20 minutes. A year. Someone drove a year. That's a lot. They took a sailboat here. That's awesome. Well, this is really fun. So I got to be a part of this last year, the first year. This second year, like last year was amazing, and this year is more amazing, which I didn't think was possible. It's been so good. All right, I'm supposed to introduce myself, which I'm not great at talking about myself, but I'll tell you what you need to know. My name's Theron Hutton. I'm a physician. I started a clinic up the road about 10 years ago after kind of being dissatisfied with how I was expected to do things, and decided I needed to do something different, and either it was do a different type of medicine style slightly, or just give it up and build houses or do something else, or farm, which would be fine too. And so that grew into something that's about 10 years old now. And one of my passions has been natural health. I'm the son of a science teacher, outdoor enthusiast. I remember planting marigolds in the corner of my fence when I was about 7, like the seeds, and actually the marigold actually came up, and I to this day remember how amazing that was. And then you read things in Genesis like plants bear seeds and they reproduce, and you're like, wow, it actually works. There's like it actually happens. Because honestly, I grew up in a neighborhood, and we, as great as my parents were, we went to the store for our food, and I didn't know where food came from, and I didn't know marigolds came from seeds. Thought they came in pots. Anyway, so that started a long journey for me that began when I was 7 and planted marigolds, and that took me to medical school, kind of on a whim. Kind of honestly didn't really know what else to do, so I signed up for medical school. Don't do that. Talk to me first. And then through a series of events, ended up going overseas, living in equatorial Africa for 5 years. And before I had to go, I got a grant to help pay off some of my student loans, because you don't make a lot of money in Uganda as a physician. So don't do that either if you're looking to make a lot of money. But I was so glad to go. And I had to go to a place called Echo before I went. And Echo's down in Florida, and it's called Sweet. Hands up. All right. Echo's awesome. So Educational Concerns for Hunger Organization. I didn't know really why I was going, except that I had to. Well, I get there, and I walk onto this campus in Florida, and I just really kind of wanted to do my thing and then go to the beach. But you walk onto the campus, and it's just like this lush tropical paradise, and these people are enthusiastic about changing the world and building soil and cleaning water and feeding the world and keeping people healthy. And there's no pharmacies anywhere. It's all plants and clean water and gardens and things. And so I was just like, man, this is amazing. And so that really changed the trajectory as I went overseas as a physician, and ended up just really trying to do less pharmaceutical prescription medication and more let's prevent with good food, good soil, and let's figure out what we have already in our environment that can make us healthy and whole. How's that sound? Sound good? All right. And so I kind of stumbled upon that. I came back and tried to figure out how to do that here, and I'm still trying. One of the things that someone told me not that long ago is if you want to be successful at something, find somebody who's busier and smarter than you and ask them how to do it, right? So the guy you see next to me standing here doesn't have a lanyard on because he is busier than me and smarter than me. And I wasn't sure I was going to be able to get him here, but I did. So I snagged him. He just got back from the airport. This is Todd Vincent. So welcome, Todd. I met Todd a couple years ago, and I don't know, I hate to use the word bromance, but it's probably appropriate. Like, we just started talking, and we're like,
well, hold on.
All
To
right.
find an MD, that actually gets what soil is and that it really starts there, this guy gets it.
Oh,
That's how we had a bromance.
We did. So really, we just kind of like playing in the dirt together. And then we try to figure out how to make a living and share that with people and do it well. So I got Todd to come. And is a real treat, honestly. And I'm going to let Todd tell you about what it is. So Todd, okay, together, this is worth the price here. Together, we have 20 children between the two of us, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that right?
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. So you'll figure out why we try to do medicine cheaply. You ain't going to the doctor. I'm sorry. Like, I cannot afford that.
I looked at his prices online. I'm like, I can't do that. I got to grow my own stuff.
That's right. Yeah. So that's part of So that's part of what we do. So I met Todd a couple years ago, and we started talking about soil and soil health and crops and nutrition and how to keep people healthy. And we've just been fast friends ever since. And so when I have a question about that, I call Todd. I've got Todd on speed dial. And if I can get him to pick up the phone, I usually have several questions. And then I go out to his farm as much as I can. It's usually a couple times a month now. And I'm going to let Todd tell you about what he does here about 30 miles from here in Summertown.
Yep. Well, hello, everybody. So my farming career started about 17 years ago. I was a guy that I never grew anything, even a house plant. Like, I literally never had a plant. I had only a pet dog. And now I've got lots of plants and lots of animals, including water buffalo. So it started with a passion of really regaining my health and not being able to find what I needed or thought I needed for my body 17 years ago. I just had this passion to jump into farming. And of all things, dairy farming was the first thing I jumped into. And funny story, my wife's here, she's in the back there. So she knows nothing about this thing that's going on in my head, that I want to sell a business that we had. And we were doing great. Back in the day, we had our dream home, like we were doing the American thing. And I sat her down one night and said, hey, I think I want to sell the business and start milking
Wives
cows.
love it when you say that. I want to do something totally different.
Yeah, they're super calm. And I said, I want to start milking cows. And now, normally, she would be very vocal about something like that. She was just silent and just staring at me weirdly. And I was like, so are you good with that? And she really didn't say anything. So I keep going forward. And months later, when I had sold the business and we were buying a farm and I was looking for cattle, she told me why. So she was reading a woman's devotional book. And in there was a story about a guy that always wanted to milk cows. And the wife never would let him. So in his old age, he went crazy and would tell everyone that he's milked thousands of cows and had a huge dairy. And so that story was freshly in her head. Well, that story enabled me to be a farmer. So she didn't say anything, and now we're farming. So that's 17 years later. Yeah. And so I started up in Illinois and ended up in Tennessee. We've been here for 12 years. We love it. I partnered with a man some of you may know, Jordan Rubin. He and Josh Axe have a company called Ancient Nutrition. So we do a lot of the growing for a lot of the regenerative certified products that go in that brand. Well, Jordan also has a passion to save soil, okay? Jordan is the real deal when it comes to putting money where his mouth is. And so he is spending a lot of money on saving soil. And we've got a 14-year project started. We're 1 year into it. We've got Rodale Institute, PhD on staff full-time. We are testing everything: water, soil, plant species, microbes, all kind of things. And we're trying to figure out, is it possible to build topsoil in 6 years? That's our first goal. So there are some numbers out there that we are about 60 growing seasons, so 60 years away from a global topsoil shortage.
And how many years? Who knows how many years it takes just naturally to build 1 inch of topsoil? What they say? 100 years, right? That's that's the common prevailing idea. It takes 100 years to build an inch of topsoil naturally.
And it takes 1 year to lose 6 inches on ground that is not properly taken care of. So it's amazing what's going on there. So we've got a contingency of water buffalo, cattle, goats, and sheep. That's our lead group. So that's our ruminant group. They're first into a paddock or into a section of field, followed by 3,000 birds, turkeys, ducks, and chickens all together. They're next into that same paddock. Then they move out, and then we're doing some no-till drilling of cover crops, and then we're waiting to see what happens. And so we are a year in. It takes us 78 days to make that rotation every time through the field. And 1 year in, I am shocked and amazed every day of what I'm seeing. And we're getting some of the data back after the first year testing has gone on. And I'm here to say already 1 year in, it's making a difference. And so we're hoping to be able to give this model away free to the world, hopefully in 6 years, and say, look, if you want an outline on how to create topsoil, not just, see, a lot of what's being talked about today is awesome. Stopping the degradation of this earth is awesome, but it's in such poor shape, we have to regenerate this. And so it's not just about not overgrazing anymore and grazing properly. It's about getting it back to a place and a nutritional density that we can actually raise crops that are better for the animals and better for us. And so that's a project that I'm spearheading and most of what I do.
So, yeah, amen, right? That's awesome, right? So I've been to Todd's farm. I've been to Todd's farm for a couple years now, and I can tell you, I've seen with like Middle Tennessee, like we try to grow stuff. It's like gravel. Like you show up to somewhere and it's I mean, my yard was like gravel, and within a couple years of taking good care of the land, you know, now at our place we have, you know, a foot of deep, dark, rich topsoil full of earthworms, and it's amazing. So that's great news to me, and I think it's great news to farmers because land is expensive, right? And you don't have to necessarily go out and look for prime, fertile ground. You can find hilly, you can find gravel, you can find land that no one wants to farm on, probably quite a bit cheaper. And honestly, with what we're talking about with perennials sort of as a foundation, and using some of these rotational methods, you can have within a very short time very fertile land.
Absolutely.
Yep. All right. So is it okay if we talk about how to use perennials when we're doing this? Is that cool? I mean, I guess that's why you came, right? Okay. All right. So this is a long. I get a little bit. I read a lot of scientific articles, and they have like long names in it. So I was like, hey, Todd, how about making use of perennials, shrubs for your homestead to feed your farm and family and for fodder? And I'm like, okay, that's too long. So how about this? Eat trees. How about that? All right. So we're going to talk about eating trees. So you can eat trees and your animals can eat them. All right. And then, by the way, like we want this to be something that's completely useful to all of you. So I'll try to do my best, but if there's questions or you want to stop us or something doesn't make, just raise your hand. So this isn't meant to be like a lecture. Just raise your hand. We'll talk. All right, so here's what we want to cover today, if that's all right. So challenges and opportunities. If you've been in homesteading for more than a minute, you know what a lot of them are. So we're going to go over those, and then we're going to talk about specifically why we feel like the planting of bushes and trees in a very strategic way can help mitigate and minimize some of these challenges that we face. And then we're going to talk about how to do that for maximum benefit. And the cool thing is, like, stay tuned because they're doing ongoing daily experimentations on how to use these things, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we'll try to answer questions at the end. Is that fine? All right. And I don't have a watch, so somebody tell me when we're going too long or something. All right. So homestead challenges and opportunities. I know a lot of you know these. So we talk about cost. So a lot of times, again, young families, young farmers, I mean, the average farmer's in his 60s. And again, land is not cheap. They're not making anymore. So cost of getting into homesteading can be significant. So we have labor costs. We have capital, so buying stuff, buying tractors, buying tools, whatever, fertilizers, implements, inputs. There's a cost there. Cost of your time. So many people don't have the ability to be a full-time farmer right out the gate. So they may have another job or some source of employment, and they're trying to get into homesteading, right? So now they're doing 2 full-time jobs at the same time. And then there can be costs to your health, costs to your animal's health, and then there can be a land cost, right? If we don't do this well, we can really mess up the land. Yep.
Yeah, I want to. Oh, you got a question over there?
No.
Oh, me?
Point at you. Yep.
I got a question. So one thing I want to tell you guys, I'm going to do a little plug for farmers real quick. So when he talks about the cost, so our first half of my farming career, or I guess 3/4 of it, has been doing farmers markets, events like this. It's a lot of work that goes into it. And at farmers markets, those of you that frequent them, if you go year to year, unfortunately, you probably notice this. There's always a change in the farmers. So typically, years ago, the ratio went something like this. For every new farmer that decided to step out of his job and start farming, 7 quit. So because we're all in that food world, we don't always hear about all of that because we keep going to the farmers market. But the trend is more people have to quit than can stay in it. And so I always try to encourage people at these things. If you got to pay more at a farmer's market right now and you're not growing your own, go pay more. I don't know how else to expand this and get this going. All these people here, man, my wife and all my kids can tell you, like, it is laborious to do things the right way. And I know a lot of these people here are doing it the right way. And it just takes a lot of time. And so rewarding them for their efforts is only going to pay off on all of us and our next generation because we've got to keep people farming.
And you will pay for this one way or another.
Ask the doctor. He'll
right?
tell you.
Like, you could pay me because you're sick, or you can pay your farmer to keep you healthy, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'll take your money, but I'd rather you give it to him. All right. Cool. I think sustainability is another big factor in farming, right? If we're not doing this in a way that's reproducible, sustainable, and not only like physically, but like emotionally sustainable. So if your kids see you like totally exhausted, miserable, angry, kicking the dirt, kicking the dog, throwing your tools in the shed at the end of the day, guess what they don't want to do, right? They don't want any part of that, right? They're going to go and work for somebody else. So feed and demand, and then usefulness. Like, I think we need to be strategic about what we're actually growing, right? So what's useful? What can we maximize the use of a single plant? So can we use the leaves, the berries, the stem, the roots, so that we're getting maximal return on investment for the work we're doing?
Yep. I don't know if you're doing this on purpose or not, but the whole
Yes.
the whole story of wanting your children, this is how hard this is, and wanting your children to actually like what you're doing. I could write a book on how to fail as a father and a farmer because it is hard. And if you go into it with the typical mindset of just, I'm going to power through and get this done, you won't have generations that want to farm after you. And I learned this early on. Before I started farming, I would just go interview farmers that I would meet. Not even healthy farmers, just conventional farmers that have been doing it for years or for generations. And the number one thing they would tell me is, don't make your kids hate this. And that stuck with me. So I just saw one of my sons is standing over there with a hat on, Ancient Nutrition. He's actually farming with me. But I've had to apologize a lot to him and a lot of the other ones because it is rough. So I'm not trying to scare anyone away from farming. I just want you to go in with a perception of, okay, this is hard work, and there's a better way to do this than people are typically doing it, so that we can really inspire people and inspire our children to want to do this and not try to make them do this. Does that make sense? Cool.
And it feels like when we're smart and we take care of the soil, take care of the earth, it takes care of us. Right, Kevin?
Yes, sir.
All right, good. All right, and then provision. I consider myself one of God's people. I mean, I'm a believer. And I feel like care for creation and care for the poor ought to be high on our list of things to do, right? And so if we are doing things in a thoughtful way, the Lord will bless them. He will create provision and abundance that we can take care of ourselves and our family and our neighbors, right? And we can take care of creation as we're doing it, right? Okay. All right. Okay, so Proverbs said a wise man stores up food and honey, by the way. Choice food and honey.
Choice food, too.
Choice food and honey, right? So not just any old food, choice food. So how do we get choice food? All right. So as many of you may have experienced, I certainly did in our family, how are food prices right now compared to 3 years ago? Anybody seen a change? I have, yes. Our grocery bill started to go up. I was like, well, we got to do something, right? And then availability, right? I think gone are the days where we can be sure we can go to the local supermarket and get exactly what we want when we want it, which is a good thing. I think it's a good thing. And like Rory said last night, and Joel said, there is a homesteading tsunami, because I think people are waking up to the reality that you have got to protect yourself and your family and your community against potential, supply chain issues, right? You seeing that?
Oh, absolutely. It's easy to be a person, going, whatever you think about COVID, I know there's a lot of different thoughts on that. The one thing I got to say it did is this. Mm-hmm. It woke people up to, wow, maybe I need to look in to see where my food comes from, maybe even how to produce some of my own food, and or supplements, because food can be supplements.
If the last 2 years changed the way you think about food, raise your hand. I mean, in some way it should have, right? Yeah. I think everybody in some way, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Food costs, food quality. Food quality, right? I can't tell you how, significant a difference it makes. I can even see it in my own kids, in their energy levels, in how they look, in their skin, and their sleep. If I am getting food locally from places that I know, if I don't have enough eggs, I go to Todd's place, I get his eggs, I feed them to my kids, and my kids will begrudgingly tell you that it makes a difference, right? Yeah. Food quality, and that's really been known for years. Albert Howard did studies on this. At the beginning of the century, when they had schools in India, they fed the schools locally from a local farm, and when they gave them what they called humus, which is compost that they made on site, those kids, and they were smart enough to study the normal school versus these kids given humus-grown foods. The health of those kids was so drastically better, they actually made it the national health policy to do that. This was 70, 80 years ago, right? So the quality of the food is so drastically different, even if it's called organic. Right? Because we can call stuff organic, and my understanding is that mostly means stuff you are not allowed to put in the food.
Yeah, so as an organic farmer, we could go out where we drove in today, where it's the path is worn down, it's rocky. I can grow organic tomatoes that will look like tomatoes. They're going to taste okay, but they're going to have very little nutritional density to them. Just because this grass is green doesn't mean it can keep an animal healthy. It's easy to green things up. What the trick is, and the goal should be, is we need to get the soil so nutritionally dense that everything that's grown on it, when we eat it, actually feeds us and gives us what we need. That's what we have to start doing as farmers and people just growing at home. It's about soil nutrition density, not about green grass or even green trees. But we're going to talk about that today.
Every day I have a conversation with patients, what should I eat? And I say, well, it depends. What are you eating and where's it coming from? And I would contend that if you're eating pasture-raised eggs from well-cared-for chickens that are eating stuff off good soil and bugs and all this stuff, you could probably get almost everything you need nutrition-wise from an egg, right? The reason that we have to eat 50 different foods is because this one doesn't have this nutrient, this one doesn't have this one doesn't, and so we have to make our net so much bigger and get 50 different fruits and vegetables and foods because there's a good chance that whatever we are eating doesn't have the full complement. So it's been shown you grow good food on good soil and healthy animals, and the number of foods you actually have to eat goes way down. Makes it more simple, honestly. And that's soil quality, right? Okay, labor we talked about, and this is something that was a little bit of a light bulb for me recently. Three main things. So at our place a while back, we just, kind of got lucky and smart and just had a moment where we thought clearly, and we just like, now we're going to plant some trees. We're going to plant some trees that we can eat from. So we planted blueberries, we planted blackberries, we planted mulberries, we planted raspberries, and a year or two later, now it's done, right? So I planted them. That wasn't easy. We planted them. It took a day or two, and now guess what? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years later, with not a ton of effort, we are reaping literally the rewards of that investment 5 years ago, right? And that's different than doing something year in and year out and year in and year out, right? And we'll talk a little bit about more about that. And then, as Todd alluded to, and he'll hopefully talk about, the idea of building soil versus eroding soil. So annuals versus perennials. What do you think?
So annual agriculture, some would say, is part of the curse of man. Mm-hmm. So if you open up Genesis and read that story, annual agriculture was not a good thing. It came out of that curse. Perennial agriculture is really what we need to strive for. And when you start doing analysis on perennial plants, such as trees, the leaves of the trees have 10x and up nutrition-wise than any other annual that you can even find. Annual agriculture takes disturbing the soil typically to grow that crop, and a lot of work to do it typically. There's a lot of people doing, adding, well, if we add mulch and we do that's great, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And so getting back to a perennial food garden is really the way to go. It's not instant, but it's not that long. It doesn't take that long. I got blueberries. I bought 5-year-old blueberry plants, and we were eating blueberries in 2 years in pretty good quantity. Yeah.
And what's cool is like the mulberries come in late May, and then the blueberries start coming in after that, and then the blackberries start coming in. So it's almost like somebody knew what was going to happen, and like they all came in, not all at the same time. They came in succession. So we're out grazing on mulberries, and we do that for 2 weeks. Birds come in, take the rest, and then we're ready to move on to blueberries, and then we're ready to move on to all the others. So it's cool how this happens, right? And I don't think it's on accident. And then simple things like, would you rather bend over and get your food, or would you rather stand up and eat your food, right? I mean, I think there's some dignity in standing up and harvesting our food, right? So that's kind of cool. Who's the Back to Eden guy? Paul Gauchi? Yeah, I mean, if you see him, like he has an amazing garden, and a lot of it's fruit trees that he has kept trimmed down to where he can reach them, and he's got some sort of disability. Like, he's not like the most mobile, active guy, but he's doing great. Like, he's providing for himself, and he's got an amazing garden, and I think a lot of it's because he's smart and knows these principles, right? Yeah. How to make the things work for him.
If you like this position, a lot, annual agriculture is for you.
Yeah.
If you don't, perennials. I mean, I can't tell you, and it's not bad to be active. I'm not saying never be on the ground. You'll still be on the ground, but annual agriculture is going to keep you in the dirt a lot more than perennial agriculture.
Yeah. All right, so this is an area of interest of mine, the health benefits of perennials, right? So again, like new stuff to me because I'm hanging around Todd and people like him. But so we know that like perennials, what happens is they develop these deep roots, and they'll even make a taproot. Trees will go deep down in the soil, and they wait for water to leach down and dissolve minerals. And those deep roots, they pull those minerals back up out of rock and clay, and they send them all the way to the tips because they're using them to make new leaves and fruit. And then what happens to those leaves is they fall down, or they become fodder, or they become food for animals, right? So they're mining minerals, whereas your annuals, I mean, the roots, a couple inches deep or whatever. So those a lot of mineral. And and another thing I've talked about before, if you're making compost and you bring leaves and you put in your compost, then your mineral density of your compost is going to go way up because those leaves are super mineral dense, right?
Yep.
Soil preservation and building, we talked about. So many of these trees, these perennials, they are not picky. We'll talk about sumac in a minute, right? If you, I'm telling you, you can make a pile of trash and scooch it over with a bulldozer, and within 3 weeks, there'll be sumac coming out of it, right? They don't care. And as they're doing that, we'll talk about they're actually stabilizing the soil. They're starting to do the work. So it's almost like a plan was in place, right?
Yep.
And so we all call it, invasive and sumac, but they're doing something. And then again, you can make many uses of different parts of these plants, and we'll talk about that. It's not just the fruit or the one part or the other. We can use so much of the plant to do many different things. And they often have complementary compounds that act synergistically, right? So if we can eat these fruits and these leaves and stuff, then there's some wisdom there. And a lot of times we have different, these plant compounds that we find out, hey, they actually work together to multiply the effect of one another when kind of consumed together. That's in both people and animals. And then one cool thing is a lot of times over time, our local vegetation has developed a defense against the local problems, the local invasive fungus and things. And so they have developed a bio-warfare defense against these things. And then our animals, and we can often make use of that rather than having to go look afar for those things. Have you seen that,
Absolutely.
Todd?
Yep.
And then one cool thing that we've been exploring lately is allergies, right? So a lot of people are like, Middle Tennessee, allergies and all this stuff. Well, what's neat, and I've heard this anecdotally, and I bet we're going to study it, but what looks like to be the case is if you burn when you're young. So here's my theory, and it's a theory, so for what it's worth. My theory is a lot of allergies develop because we're not exposed to these antigens locally when we're young. So if you think about what people used to do is they used to sit around a fire and burn stuff to cook their food. And what would happen is all the little children, the babies, the mamas would be cooking, the babies would be there, and they'd be gathering vegetation, perennial vegetation from the area, and what would they do? They would bring it and burn it. And then when you burn stuff, you heat it, then the compounds volatilize into the air, and then what happens? We breathe them in. And a lot of times it smells good. We breathe them in, and then I believe it actually desensitizes us to our local environment. So honey, cooking, and then what we think is probably true is when we feed our animals local vegetation or they're browsing on local vegetation, then we eat the eggs or we drink the milk, then there's a good chance that we're also in small ways desensitizing our bodies to these local allergens. And I have heard people tell me that.
Yeah, and I would say on the eggs in particular, so it's only been like between 60 and 80 years that chickens have been eating. Most chickens before that ate local. You had your own little flock in your yard. You were giving them your food scraps, or they were eating out of your pasture. The idea of bringing bought grain in from somewhere else is relatively new. And so I think that's had a lot of negative ramifications on the quality of eggs and meat that we consume, for sure.
Yeah, you're good. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so the question is does it good to get local eggs from somebody feeding them, like scraps and stuff from the yard? I think so. I think that chicken is ingesting antigens, proteins from the area, and then processing them. I think the chicken's processing them, and some of that's showing up in the egg that then we consume. And it's been shown that if you internalize a lot of these things, then your sensitivity goes down. Yeah, so eggs could be a potential way to do that. Exactly. Yep. All right, and then, yes, question. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, she's talking about the impact, the negative impact on even our pets and farm animals having a lack of nutritional density in their food. I'll give you a quick story. When we started this project, we were scrambling around looking for enough animals to do, because we have a certain amount of numbers per square foot on these pastures. So I needed to find like 100 goats really fast. I went to the local sale barn here in Columbia and bought 100 goats. Those of you that have bought animals from the sale barn, you know they come with a myriad of diseases, and I had every one of them, right? So these goats show up, and within days, they're just declining. I had a couple start die on me. They had ORF. All these things started happening. We opened the gates, and I pushed them into the woods. And I gave them 4 days in the woods. They came out of the woods. A week later, it's probably one of the best goat herds in this area. I would put up again because I was able to give them so goats are browsers like deer. So the forest is their medicine chest. And after sending them through the woods and watching them heal, it was one of those light bulb moments, like we should know this. But I started sending all my animals through the woods. So now every
And his
pass-
kids.
and my kids, they're always in the woods. But seriously, we need to be in the woods for lots of reasons, and that's one of them for sure is animal health. Yeah.
Good point. Thanks. Let's see. Did we cover this one? All right. So, so food forest creates weather resilience. So we get these microclimates or times where we have excessive droughts, excessive heat, excessive water. And what's amazing is if you have this diversity, this food forest, especially with perennials, you will actually see it buffer against those problems for a number of reasons. Pest resilience, again, like we don't want to be monocropping. So Todd will talk about how they approach using the perennials as a non-monocrop, so how they're interspersing them. Because, if you have a monocrop situation, you have a pest come in, they love a monocrop, and they can just wipe the whole thing out. And then you have you don't have any buffer against that whatsoever. So diversity breeds resilience. So we want to diversify our plants on our farm. And then food supply, talked about that. They ripen at different seasons, both for us and our animals. And then ecological diversity and abundance. Okay. All right. So big question, like what do we do with this? So what to plant? All right. So here's some considerations, obviously. What's going to grow where you are? Like there are things we're just not going to grow here. Like we're just not going to grow a lot of mango trees in Middle Tennessee, although we would love that, right? And there's so we've got to know what's going to grow in your region. And actually, one good way to know what grows in your region is to figure out what grows in your region, right? So go out in the woods and see what's growing in your region, right? There's a good chance that you're being told what grows well here, right? So we'll talk about what that is. So we are in Zone 7 here in Middle Tennessee, and we'll talk about what that means to those that don't know. I didn't not that long ago. We want to grow things that have many benefits if possible. So we want to be able to use the plants, the fruit, the green, the stems, and the roots if we possibly can, right? So all the way from top to bottom, nose to tail for those of you carnivores. And then what makes good companion plants? So what are things, again, that like to be next to each other? Again, if you're not sure, go out in the woods and look. And don't be afraid to experiment, right? I mean, there's a guy I learned about who literally breaks open apples. He takes the seeds out and plants them. And if you know, apple seeds do not genetically represent the tree that they came from. They're totally different, like different children, And so he'll literally grow an apple tree, spend 5 or 6 years till it starts to make an apple, bite the apple, and then he'll cut the tree down if it's no good, right? I mean, that's his job. So it's a big experiment, a lot. But anyway, so don't be afraid to experiment. Like you are gonna fail sometimes, right? Don't be afraid to do that. Fail fast, though. All right. All right, so what do we like here in Middle Tennessee? We know some of you came from far, and I would say probably a lot of this applies as you go east to west, maybe north to south. We'll just have to use a little bit of discretion. All right, Todd, do you want to tell us about these?
Yeah, so we just, this is a talk that could go on for days, really. There's so many things that we could talk about. So we just kind of picked some of the highlighted ones. So we went with willow, pawpaw, sumac, elderberry, oak, and mulberry.
So if you want to get your camera out and take a picture of that, then
these are just a good representation that will cover a lot of the areas for animal and human health and health of the earth. So I know Theron was getting ready to allude to something when we were talking about mangoes. I'm assuming it was the pawpaw tree. Yeah. So have anyone in here had a pawpaw? Who's eaten a pawpaw? Is it not like one of the best fruits you've ever had? It's kind of, for me, it's like a pineapple, a mango, and a banana all got together and had a baby. It's very custardy. You would not think that it's from this area, but they grow all over. Matter of fact, did you say they grow like everywhere? Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
All the way up to Wisconsin, and they're just an amazing fruit.
All over the eastern seaboard.
And the reason you don't see them in stores and they're not monetized is because they ripen really fast. You got about 3 days. You can refrigerate them, maybe get a week. You really need to take them apart and freeze them if you want to really keep that for use. But they haven't figured out how to monetize them, which I love because they're not messing with the variety. So you can use the fruit, you can use the stems, and you can use the leaves of that plant. They are packed full of antioxidants and really a powerhouse for humans and animals.
And for those, so this was confusing me because I spent 5 years in equatorial Africa, and they have a pawpaw, which is the papaya, and they call it the pawpaw. And that's actually where this name came from.
Yeah.
So world travelers came here, and they saw a tree that looked like the papaya, and they called it the pawpaw. So this is the eastern U.S. tree, and we'll talk about it in a minute. But there is a difference. But you'll have a papaya tree, which is different, also very, very good tree, and then the pawpaw. Well, we're going to go over each one individually, so you should get it. So number one here, we've got the willow tree, all right? So this is an awesome tree. I'll let Todd talk about this. So willow is really famous for soil stabilization. You're going to find them, obviously, everyone knows they're by riverbanks, so they love the water. They actually been shown to improve water quality, right? So cruddy water that's near willow trees will come out the other side a lot cleaner. So if you have problems with dirty water, you want willow trees around. Really fantastic for habitat and biodiversity. So animals love willow trees. They just feel safe in there. The willow bark has an aspirin-like compound in it. It's pretty amazing. So the salicin is good for pain. And then it also can be used as a rooting compound. We're going to talk.
Should we just show them?
Yeah, we'll show you how to do that. So if you have willow around, which I bet you do, and you are planting saplings or seedlings, you can use a willow.
How many of you worked with willow? Anybody in here worked with this plant? So you know it's very resilient. It's got a lot of uses, one being a windbreak. So there's a lot of situations where your property might be in a zone where you just have wind damage a lot, or you're trying to have a garden or an area where you need some protection. Willows, they're amazing. They're strong, and they have good blocking capability. They are like a filter, like an earth filter. I love them for that quality. But another quality that I love about the willow is if you're trying to propagate other plants, whether that be trees or even annuals, that you really want to kick off and multiply, this has some of the most available hormone in it that will excel rooting activity into other plants. So you could take this, and I would typically just skin the bottom of this, put this in a glass of water, and in about 36 hours, that water could be used as a hormone replacement instead of buying one to get your roots to express themselves. It actually works better than most of those. If you really want to zip it up, you take this and like blend it in a Vitamix or a blender, or just cut it up in a bunch of small pieces, put that in water, and in 12 to 24 hours, that water is going to be like gold if you're trying to start other plants and get them to root quickly. So willow has a lot of great uses. If I let my ruminants come by the willow trees, it's the first thing they go hit. They will strip these trees down in moments. And guess what? These trees grow right back. I've stripped mine down probably 3 to 4 times a year, and they just keep coming back. Another reason I love them. Yeah.
Just full of energy, and it's awesome. And you just, when you have that tea from you just do like a dip.
Yeah, so then I would take a cutting from another plant that I'm wanting to get rooted, and then you just put that right into that jar of water that you've got, it's called willow water, into there, and then you'll start to see roots form fairly quickly. Yep. Yes, all willow varieties will have that. Some have more than other, but yes, they'll all do it. Oh yeah, replanting willow is super easy. Yeah. Yep.
A lot of times, I think these like hard to kill, fast growing, I think of them as energetic plants. Yeah. You know, they grow fast. Sometimes they die young. They grow fast, but it's almost like you can't kill them, and they just want to reproduce. They just root. Yeah, like a teenager. All right. Yes. The question was, how long can you use the tea when you make the willow tea?
So when you make the willow tea, usually one batch will give you enough to propagate whatever you're putting in. So once you see roots express, take those out, pour that out, and start again for your next batch. But you don't have to refresh the batch that you've started. It'll.
So you would leave the cuttings in until they start to root.
Until they root.
Okay. All right. We talked about pawpaws some, so we'll go over that one again. So that is Asimina triloba. The fruit has three lobes on it. Again, all up and down the eastern U.S. Sounds like it's in the Midwest as well. The fruit we talked about is edible, super nutritious. They've used the woody parts for crafts for a long time. Traditionally, it's been used for fever, upset stomach, dysentery, and parasitic infection. I can tell you that it's probably the same compound. The seeds of the papaya are extremely anti-parasitic, and I would venture to say these are as well. So they grind them up and just take them directly. And if you need to clear parasites out of you or your animals, it's a good bet.
It works great. Also, this tree is actually a cousin. Has anyone heard of soursop? So this would be a cousin to soursop. The leaves look very similar, and there's a lot of similar properties. So oftentimes in this country, we seem to gravitate towards plants from other countries and say, oh, they have a superfood in South America that I got to have. And it truly is, but we have them here as well. And so I would say that pawpaw would be one of those leaves for sure.
Yep. There's research ongoing, and like some of it's very close to home on cancer, inflammation, antioxidants. Now, I will say that there is a compound, and Todd, I don't know if you have it. It's this compound called annonacin. They have had in folks that have consumed this daily for years, they have exhibited some Parkinson-like symptoms. It seems to affect like the dopamine neurotransmitters in the brain. So, word of caution, just like like any medicinal thing, let's not go overboard. But those were literally people that were consuming like large quantities every single day. Yeah. So, all right. Questions on that? Questions on that one? Good. All right, sumac we talked about. So we really like smooth sumac. That's Rus glabra. You want to talk about that one, Todd?
Yeah, so it's one of the ones he was talking about that just, you can't get rid of it. And so years ago when I started farming, I was always, I had a different perception than I do now. So to me, when I first started farming, those pictures on garden magazines of a garden with crumbled soil and no weeds and just perfect lines, we were taught that that's beauty. But the reality is that's not reality. And when you have exposed soil like that, you're actually causing more soil degradation than you are healing, okay? So as I started looking at how things grow and what keeps coming back and why can't I get this plant to not grow, I started saying, well, maybe there's something in this plant that I need. And so when I started looking up those berries in particular have more vitamin C than an orange, way more. So instead of importing oranges, I make sumac tea, sumac berry tea. It's wonderful. It tastes good. It's got a nice citrus flavor to it, actually. Very useful. And then this tree, as far as the Native Americans go, they call this the vinegar tree. And it's because of the leaves and then the sourness of the berries, like vinegar. They would use this for all kind of things. Their animals would eat it. I feed this to our herd. We actually cut sumac branches and take them out to the herd when they're not in wooded areas, just so they can have some of this, because it's got such a nutritional depth to it. So again, hard to kill, easy to grow, and super good for humans, for us, and for the earth.
Good. I was always afraid of sumac. I always heard, I associate poison sumac in my mind, but this is not that one. So yeah.
We're feeding water buffalo, cattle, sheep, and goats, and then a lot of birds too also eat it.
So this one, studies have shown there are 300 plus known species of animal that will feed off of these, what they call drupes, the big clusters of berries that come off of these things. So if you really want to encourage that, they'll do it. Oh yeah, you got another talk coming.
That's a whole nother talk. Real quick, so water buffalo to me I like them better than cows for a few reasons. They haven't been as messed with as cattle over the years. They have very little disease issues, no hoof issues, no pink eye. They eat a wider variety of plants, and they love people, and they'll sit in my lap. I really like them.
They are the sweetest animal. They are like big puppy dogs. The first time I went to Todd's farm, I was talking to him and Jordan, and we're just in the field, and I'm just talking, and I something comes up and starts nuzzling me on the side, like wanting to be petted. Clearly, I thought, there's some dog. I thought it was like a big dog or a Pyrenees, and so I just start scratching it, And then this big water buffalo comes around with his horns, and it's just like rubbing on me, and I'm scratching its ears. I mean, they're the cutest, friendliest giant. I mean, you talk about a gentle
really,
giant.
and it's just fun to be the farmer in the area that I'm the only one that has a water buffalo.
Right.
So that's just cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Super cool. All right. And they, anyways. All right. So we'll go on. All right. Elderberry. I hope y'all know elderberry by now, right? So elderberry, I mean, I feel like that's been popular for 10 years now. But still a good one, right? So it's still good. Almost every part of the elderberry plant's useful, super easy to grow. Like literally cut a stick, throw it in some willow, stick in the ground, it's going to grow. Yep. Almost all of it's edible. It is antiviral, antimicrobial flu. Like I literally, like people come in with flu and this, I'm just like, okay, do you want, just get on, they don't even come in anymore. I'm just like, get on your elderberry. Question. Can you do elderberry on animals?
Yes, they will eat elderberry.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So birds in particular. So if you don't get to your elderberries soon enough, you'll have no elderberries. Yeah, so here's my school of thought is a little different on animals than some. I will let my animals eat known toxic plants because they're going to gauge, so a little bit is good. So even for us, I believe there's a little bit can help us. It's when we overdo things. So I'll watch my animals eat hemlock, eat wild cherry leaves, where most people would panic. I'm going to let them eat some of that. And they typically, if they've got the forage they need, they might nibble on some of that as they need it and then move on. And I don't have any problems with it. Yep.
Good. All right, we'll move on.
I actually don't know about dogs.
What kind of dog? If it's a bulldog, no. Sorry. Yeah, my opinion. I mean, I am not a full-time farmer. I'm a physician, but in talking to the Dartys and Joel and all, like animals haven't. I mean, they're not totally dumb, except for bulldogs. But they will. I mean, they're smart. Like you'll see a cow. I mean, again, a dog. I don't know, but like they tend. Like when your cat walks out and starts nibbling on grass, like there's a reason it's doing that. It's not because it's, it just decided to eat some grass. But and so you'll see them, they'll graze. And I feel like they smell and they intuitively know what they need to be looking for. So, I mean, I don't know every particular situation, but I do feel like animals are pretty smart about that stuff usually. That's my experience anyway, so. All right, oak. Probably the one everyone here should be most familiar with. And there's 12 species of oak that grow around here. They're all in the Quercus family. Anti-inflammatory, the bark and the leaves. Can use them for oral health, the bark. And the leaves have very potent antioxidants. Anything about oak trees, Todd?
Yeah, so who in here has had oak leaf tea? Has anyone ever made oak leaf? Oh, yeah, of course, Sam. Anybody else? So this was crazy. It's one of those things. They grow everywhere. We see them all the time. I'm raking their leaves. I've used their leaves. I've made stuff with their acorns. And as I dug in, oak leaf tea is something that's been used by the Native Americans as well as not only a refreshing beverage, but a healing tonic. So easy to make. Literally walk outside, grab your leaves, crush them up, boil the water, oak leaf tea. It actually, you'll be surprised, it tastes a lot like black tea. And then we like to take it and mix different things with it, whether that's pine needle. When we were having sickness go around and the whole COVID thing, we were doing pine needle and oak leaf tea. And it really, truly is a healing tonic that tastes great. So I think everybody's got oak leaves. They're everywhere. They're so good for you. Even a poultice. You take oak leaves, and fresh oak leaves, and make a poultice. It's been known to take localized inflammation. So if you've got something that's inflamed from some type of injury, make a poultice of oak leaf, and you won't believe how fast that goes away. It's amazing.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
What's that?
Can you dry that stuff?
Oh, yeah.
They have an entire drying room at the farm where they have someone full-time drying leaves.
Yep.
Yep. So is the tea with green or dry? What would you do?
Green preferably. So once a tree dries their leaves, it's sent all that nutrition back down the tree and into the roots. So you really want to harvest, and spring is a great time because it's sending a lot. But really, anytime they're green, you're going to have some good stuff there. Yeah.
Was that right? Or were you asking if you could dry them?
No, that's right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I've used leaves off of those trees, still standing. So.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you've got the small leaf. Absolutely. We've planted a bunch of those here, and we use them all the time. They're really good. Yeah.
All right. Yes, question. Arthritis. You think of it?
Willow.
Oh, yeah. Willow, because it's got that salicin in it. That's like aspirin.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's the inner bark, right?
Yep. The
yeah,
inner bark
willow.
of a willow tree is just like taking aspirin.
Yeah. Good question. All right, and this is my family and my personal favorite. I can't end the talk about perennials without talking about the wonderful mulberry tree. The name of my clinic's Mulberry Clinic, by the way. So, all right, so mulberries, fantastic. We brought some. We'll show you about how to make mulberry cuttings. So it's traditionally there's the white mulberry from China, and the leaves of that are used to make silk. So they give these silkworms only white mulberry leaves, and they make silk, which is really cool to me. I call this the fastest plant in the West. So it grows fast and it pollinizes fast. So what's cool about this that I love, and it doesn't have any bearing on life other than it's a neat fact. So the mulberry has the fastest plant part of any known plant in the world. The stamen of the flower shoots off pollen at half the speed of sound. So it's the fastest known. So a little tidbit there. It's amazing. Super fast. They've tried to catch it on high-speed camera. It's amazing. Which tells me a lot about this plant, I think. So so the leaves, the dark color, especially we got red, you've got black, you've got white, you've got a lot of different mulberry species. The whole plant is edible. The deep color you get in the berries is these anthocyanins. They have monster antioxidants full of vitamin C. Resveratrol, if you know that molecule, they call that the anti-aging molecule. It's why we all get away with drinking more red wine than we should. Because of we say it's good for us, right? It's the we don't know how to say that word, but it's good for us. But they're actually doing studies like consuming certain types of resveratrol actually lengthens your telomeres, which is the chromosomes that get shorter as you age, which is associated with declining things. So resveratrol can actually stop or even reverse the shortening of telomeres, which is kind of cool. There's potentially cancer protective properties of resveratrol, flavonoids. These rutin, quercetin, and camphorol are all good for your eyes and inflammation. And then it's a potential antioxidant. There's one specific compound, which is called morin, from this mulberry, which has been studied for anti-cancer properties, again, the vitamin C and fiber. We've got one. In fact, the one that was in the previous picture is the one in our yard we planted a couple years ago, and my kids just love it. You can eat the leaves, you can eat the berries, you can eat the roots. It's fantastic. And so we'll talk about that one a little bit more because it's my favorite. Yes, ma'am.
The only one that's putting out fruit?
Putting out fruit, yeah.
You meaning the only Yes.
Yes, there are. So you may have more of one than the other.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
And real quick, are we going to talk mulberry a little bit? Okay. This tree, when you go back and study animal husbandry and feeding, and has anyone heard the word tree fodder? So it's tree hay, basically. So we did a big experiment this past winter, and before the trees lost their leaves, while they were still green, we went in and cut a bunch of branches off and hung them upside down like you would tobacco and dried them in a barn. And this winter, that was a supplemental feed that we were able to take out to the ruminants in the field. And it was the best winter I've ever had as far as animal health goes. When you cut these, the leaves stay green in the winter. So you cut them while all the minerals are still in them, and it locks them into that leaf. So then when you take that dried leaf out there to that herd, instead of eating hay that's very void of nutrition, they've got a supplement that you didn't go buy at a store that grows right on your place that will grow back twice as fast next year. It's an amazing tree. It is also one of my favorites.
So, Todd, I wonder if you would tell us how to plant these things. So, a lot of times we walk around. There's a willow tree over here that's really big and tall, and then there's maybe a mulberry tree over here that's big and tall, which is great. But if we're trying to utilize these on our farm to feed ourselves and our families, what can we do? How do we do it?
So let's talk about food security. Let's talk about how we would treat things if we had to act differently in today's world and really feed ourselves and our animals. We would no longer take a tree like a mulberry tree or a willow tree and plant it 30 feet apart and say, hey, I'll see you in a few years, and just walk away. I know a lot of people like to plant trees and kind of almost worship them and like, yeah, this is great, you're a giant oak tree, and that's great. But if you really want to clean the air, you need a tree that is doing rapid photosynthesis, okay? That process is the process that really cleans atmospheric carbon issues. They need to be putting on leaves to do that, okay? So what we've done, I'm maintaining over 500,000 trees on just 133 acres, plus this grazing project. So we are also learning how to utilize space like never before. And so what we've done is we've planted these trees. So my mulberry trees are in rows 8 inches apart. So if you imagine the number 5 dice, that pattern, that's what I've planted. All those dots are 8 inches apart. And so I disturbed 12 inches of soil and planted that pattern over and over and over in these rows, essentially creating what looks like a vineyard. So my mulberry trees don't get taller than about 6 or 7 feet because I come back in and cut them with tea leaf harvesting equipment, which brings them back down to a hedgerow. So that hedgerow then becomes a water stopping agent, a wind stopping agent, a place for all kinds of rodents and critters and wild honeybees start to show up. These hedgerows, I'm learning, are something that we're missing. So I went back and studied all that they did in Wales and throughout Europe on hedgerows and why they did this. I'm figuring it out. It's way easier to harvest from something this low than a giant 200-foot, 300-foot tree. Or the animals can feed themselves off of that. So when you're laying your farm out or your homestead out, if you can plant in a way that will make it easier on you so that instead of you always bringing the food to your animals, you can actually bring your animals to their food. And hedgerows is a way to do that. So we've got our oak trees like that. We've got hackberry like that. We've got crabapple like that. I've got about 30 indigenous varieties of trees in that fashion. So
Does that make sense? So you can plant like dozens or hundreds of these in a row.
Yes.
And you maybe 1 or 2 rows next to each other,
Yep.
same tree, with 6 or 8 feet in between, so you can cut or mow or run your rabbits or something in the
Yep.
middle, and then you move on to your next one. So it's like you're row cropping, but perennials, right?
So what we did, because we were doing so many, we contracted with a nursery that specializes in native trees. Now, how we're maintaining and growing our situations, I'm taking cuttings, putting them in willow water, and filling in where I need to or creating new rows by doing that. But we did initially start working with a nursery. Yeah.
So if you've got 2 gigantic mulberry trees, you've got a ton of cuttings.
Oh, yeah.
And Todd, is this a good time to show them how to do it?
Yeah.
We'll show you how to do a mulberry cutting.
Yeah.
My kids did this.
Why don't you?
All right, I'll show you. So my kids did this, and they planted like 20 cuttings, and without doing anything to them, I would say half of them took rooted. We didn't even use rooting compound. So, I mean, you talk about a plant that wants to grow. This is one.
This is a red mulberry.
So what I had them do is, so what I do is try to find a, can I cut this one?
Absolutely.
Okay. So this is, what I go down to like the woody part and just cut that off.
What's funny, he's going to cut this off. It'll just grow back in this bag.
And then what I do is I count 4 nodes. So this one's close. So I would go like 1 node, 2 nodes, 3 nodes, right? And then this is my 4th node right here. And I won't cut that one completely off. So I'd probably cut that one and then leave this. And I would just kind of give that, I feel like I give that a little like, hey, you better wake up. Cut the leaf in half. Yeah. So then I'd probably cut this leaf maybe in half, right? So then you've got, ideally you got 1, 2, 3 nodes. And then I would put this in your rooting compound. You could bother that a little bit if you wanted to with your finger. Put that in root. So you can dip it in rooting compound. I mean, I'm telling you, like, if you do this, half of them will grow, period. But if you want to get more than that, you could dip it in rooting compound or let it soak in your rooting compound. Roots will come out. And then literally we put them in like cardboard boxes or tubs with just sand, a sand dirt mixture, and we just literally stick them in, make sure. And mulberries love water, so it's hard to overwater them. And then over time, you'll just see new growth coming out. You just pull them out, stick them in. And you can direct sow these if you know where you want them, and your rows are ready to go, and you just dig your row. Like, you can literally just have your kids or neighbors, like, cut these. Just say, hey, go cut me 100 of these. You know, pay them a penny each or whatever. And then that's what I gave my kids. And then just stick them in the ground, and half of them, and then you just go back and fill in. And then the mulberries you guys have are, so not old at all, right?
No, I mean, I've got a field that the one we just walked through the other day, this is its 3rd season. And we've probably taken 6 cuttings off of it to feed the animals. And they're just prolific.
It's tons of food for your animals.
Yeah.
And good food. Anti-parasitic.
And I make tea with those leaves all the time. I drink a wild leaf tea, is what I'm calling it, almost every day, a couple quarts. And we literally will just go out, strip some leaves. I dry some of them, so I always have a stock. I ferment some of them. And some I'll just do fresh, and we're drinking this tea all the time. So I'm 95, so I'm just saying, it really works. This really works.
It's almost 95.
Is there a preference of male or female when you're propagating like that?
I don't think I'd just do them all.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'd probably mix them up. Yeah.
So the ones we're drying for fodder for the animals, we're hanging in an old tobacco barn. So just hanging like you would tobacco. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, anyone who does permaculture design and we're working on slopes or hillsides, especially if you know sort of the level sort of, terrain where that would be. If you just, we did it. When I was over in East Africa, it's just hills and hills, Rwanda and East Uganda. And that was a big problem, just heavy rains and erosion because of deep tilling, right? And so one of the things we helped them think through is how do we minimize that? So we would just make A-frame levels, and so they know sort of where their terrain was level. And then we would there we were using like moringa and other things like that, and we would just have them do exactly the same thing. And you want to talk about growth. Equatorial Africa, they joke, you throw a stick you just throw a stick, tomorrow you come back, it's going to have leaves. It is that fertile. So, and yeah. Actually, that's where I learned about mulberry, is a friend of ours. It's a cool story. A guy lived down a village. Our family went to visit him. Beautiful, beautiful tree in the front of his hut. Just, green berries. He said, my kids love this. He's like, I feel like it keeps us strong and healthy. And he couldn't really think of the name of it. He said and I took a picture back when I had a smartphone, and I figured out it was a mulberry tree. And anyway, that's where we fell in love with it.
By the way, you just said that. I have to comment. So this is the only doctor I know that has a flip. He just went back to a flip phone. I love that. Just want everybody to know
You
that.
can do it. You can do it.
You can do it. He's really hard to text with, but it's okay. It works. Well, I got one other quick mulberry story, too. So we just had our inspection. So we're at our certified organic farm, and we are the first farm in Tennessee that got regenerative certification. So, thank you. And so with that comes inspections. And our inspector was just here to do our yearly inspection. And his wife is from Honduras. And he spent a lot of time there helping farmers and whatnot. And mulberry grows like crazy throughout Honduras as well. It grows everywhere. And to the point where he had a friend that had a dairy, a 200 head dairy there in Honduras, and all of the forage had played out. It was a drought. It had all played out. And guess what tree there was a whole bunch of? The only thing that was left was mulberry. And he talked this guy into letting his dairy herd out into the mulberry trees. They made the most milk they've ever made and looked the best they've ever looked just by eating mulberry leaves. And it got him through the slump into where he needed to be when the rainy season came. So there's just so many applications here. Yeah.
And when you're purposeful about where it's going to be and where it's going to be planted, then you take your electric fence and you put them around there. You put what animals you want in there when you want them, and it should be grazing height. They're going to graze it down. They're going to get rid of most of it, but it's likely it's going to come back, right? You move them to the next place, and then within a few weeks, it's right back where it was. So,
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Say something about goats. Oh, do goats like mulberries? Yes, absolutely. Yes. I have people asking me all the time for mulberry cuttings specifically to feed goats.
Yeah.
Yep. Yes.
So we're affiliated with Ancient Nutrition. So if you go to their website, there's the Ranch Project. So if you click on that, you can see photos of kind of what we're doing, and it gives our story. It gives all kind of information on that. We're doing a lot of cool things that I'm really proud to be a part of, for sure. So those are bison. My buffalo get mad when you call bison buffalo.
They don't like it.
They turn into raging killing machines. So those are bison. These are water buffalo. So, yeah.
Yeah, not the big Cape buffalo that'll
Yeah.
turn your car over. Yeah.
So we partnered with a nursery out of Georgia called Native Forest. Yep. Yeah.
Cape buffalo.
Cape
All
water
right.
buffalo,
Yeah,
and so
Cape buffalo.
these are a variety of those, and it's interesting. So we had a stray dog get into the herd, and inside this herd, so there's goats, sheep, and water buffalo and cows all grazing together in a very tight 0.7 of an acre. I've got a couple hundred animals that we move every 24 hours, 7 days a week. In that herd, a dog jumped in there and started dragging out a sheep. Within about 4 seconds, every water buffalo was over there and had that dog pinned to the ground. It was crazy. Yeah. So they're an amazing guard animal. You don't need any other guard animal if you have a water buffalo. But yet they love people. So, yeah.
Yeah. So a little story about Todd and why I like him among many. I walk in. I always ask him what he's eating. I'm like, "What are you eating or drinking now?" And it's usually just something green. And we walk in the other day, and he just like grabs a jar of something and a spoon. It's like this brown powder, and I'm like, "All right, what are you eating?" He's like, "This is some desiccated water buffalo liver organ that I just did myself." And so
Yep.
that's his afternoon snack.
That was a little snack in the afternoon. That's good.
So, yes, sir.
So, I mean, typically you're running with some pretty good people when you go to a farmer's market, generally. But as a farmer, I always encourage an open door policy. Now, it can be a pain because the farmers are busy. It's hard to stop and do tours and whatnot. But I always allowed it because I wanted people to feel very comfortable for where their food come from. So I would talk to the farmers and say, look, can I come out sometime and see what you got going? And if they really hem and haw, I don't know what to say then. Oftentimes farmers need help. Sometimes volunteers are not as much help as you think. If you can be a person that's really going to volunteer and work for the farmer, get out there and work, you're going to know right away his practices, and you're going to know how much you can trust his food and what's going on there. So I would just say you got to ask the questions and get under the hood and just, sense their response. Yeah.
Yeah. Any of them good for chickens?
All of them.
Yep.
All
Yep.
of them. Yep.
Yep. Yeah, I will cut off mulberry leaves and just chop them up wherever and throw them in the chicken. The chickens go crazy over
Yeah.
them. The berries. I mean, the berries disappear instantly when they're. Yeah. Yes. Chestnut.
So I do have chestnuts, and I don't have hazelnuts, but they're on my list. What kind?
Spice bush.
I do not.
Come tell us later about spice bush. What we want to know. Thanks. Yeah.
Oh, relative of allspice. Okay. Nice. No, I don't know about that one.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Mulberries fruit. Yeah.
I ate some yesterday. Actually, when he was out the other day, we ate him.
Yeah. They do. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny, that animal's so big, but really hates electricity. So you can keep him in with one line, no problem. Now, if they run out of anything, they're leaving. It won't stop them unless if they have water and they have food, they're totally fine. Yeah.
And they don't have to have water. I mean, you'd think they have to have water.
Yeah,
but
they don't
do okay.
need,
like
you
it.
don't need to have a pond for them, but I'm going to tell you what, if you do have a pond, they're going to be in there, and they completely submerge. They look like hippopotamuses in there. All you see is their nostrils. One of my sons is here. He had to swim out, and he has to swim out and get them out of the pond sometimes, so, yeah. So our paddock sizes are 0.7 of an acre. And right now, we just are going through kidding and lambing, so we probably have, I probably have around 80 to 90 sheep on that, and probably 70 to 80 goats on that. I've got 17 water buffalo and 12 more coming on that same spot.
And what's your rotation frequency for getting?
Yeah,
back
so
to
every
that?
24 hours, we're moving that spot.
And when will you get back to that paddock?
78 days.
78
every
days.
78 days.
Yeah.
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 Do you actually feed your chickens like chicken feed from the store, or just?
So I do not. That's a whole nother. So we actually are one of the first farms that are strictly feeding all of that contingency of birds that I'm talking about. We're now at 900,000 pounds of food waste that we pick up from local stores. So we pick up all of Nashville, Franklin, and Murfreesboro Sprouts stores' produce. We also pick up the urban markets, all of their stuff, a few other restaurants. And so all of our bird contingency is fed food scraps, making those stores food negative as far as their waste going to the dump. And we're creating, what's crazy is, another side note, we're creating a food forest that you can't believe, because in those food scraps, we're getting not millions, but trillions of seeds every dump. I mean, think about how many seeds are in a strawberry and a blueberry. So we don't know what this pasture is going to end up being someday, but I feel like we're creating a food forest for sure. Yeah.
That's cool. All right.
Yep. One more. Beautyberry? Oh yeah, that is a superfood for sure. Eat away. Good for Oh yeah, very good for animals and human consumption. Yeah.
So that's right here. So they're on pasture, so they're following cows. So they'll do the manure, hunt through manure for worms and fly larvae, and get the food, right?
Yeah.
And grass.
Yeah. I can't hear.
How much food are you getting, like per bird or yeah, like do you know how much food you're bringing in?
So we usually dump. Grayson, do you know how much chicken scraps we dump a day to each paddock? Yeah, probably 1,200 pounds of food scraps a day go in that paddock for 3,000 birds.
And the cool thing is, if the birds don't happen to eat or something, it just degrades and turns into soil.
Yeah.
Right? So it's one way or another, it's going to get there.
So we do drag a chicken house. It's actually fashioned after Joel's model that he has on skids. So you do get eggs. So that's we're not into the egg business. That's just what we're getting because we have all these birds. So we get duck, chicken, and turkey eggs. And I gotta say, the no-grain eggs are probably the best eggs you'll ever eat. They're absolutely amazing. And so we do pull a unit, yes. Yeah.
What's that thing? The millennium feather thing. Whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, millennium, whatever.
Like one of those.
Yes.
So we get all their meat scraps. So I've opened cans stacked with fillets out of their cooler. I kind of want to eat out of there sometimes. It's really amazing what they throw away. That's a side note. It's like that we have anybody starving in this country. It would make you cry what gets thrown away. And we're doing that with 4 stores. That's how much I've gotten so far in a year. 4 stores. If every store in this country, we would have so much food and compost that could be done. It's crazy. But yeah, we get meat, we get all their fruit, all their vegetables, some bread occasionally, but that's mainly it, yeah. Bulk foods, nuts. No.
Yes.
Did you have any restrictions? Like in Wisconsin, we've gone to our local co-op. They will not allow seed or anything.
Any problem?
No, Sprouts was having to pay to take this away. And so we're picking it up. I mean, it's costing us, but we're picking it up for them for free, and it's going to a good cause, and they're really behind. So, yeah.
What do you do with the food? Just gets dumped?
Yeah.
Somebody's uncle runs that company
Yeah.
that's picking those up. Yeah. Yeah, there's a number out there. I do. Yeah.
There might be others, but he's the best.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we connect you with. Yeah. We can get you hooked up. Yeah. All right. I think yes.
So we have some bald eagles that like to work our birds. We've had some owls that like to come in, but other than that, those water buffalo keep everything else away.
We got a couple good guard dogs for our flock that help.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay. We are pretty much exclusively using hedgerows.
All those 6 and more are in rows, hedgerows. Yeah, it's great. Back here, yes, ma'am. I would absolutely do walnuts. That way.
I have 55,000 walnut trees growing. So,
Yeah.
and I have yet to see a negative impact of that. I know about the juggling and all that, but we're not seeing that. I did plant all my walnut trees on the downslope side of my tree fields just in case, but we're not noticing a negative impact. Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a great parasite leaf to use.
Black walnut
Yeah.
hole. Yep.
Yeah, black walnut.
So what are the strategies you're using for the hedgerows?
Yeah, in which way?
I mean, how are you deploying them and what's the purpose?
So right now, as we're letting them get to size, we're harvesting and taking food to the animals or storing it, and we're also harvesting and creating foods for supplements with those leaves. The future is going to be, as they get big enough, we're going to be able to let our ruminant herd graze the aisleways using the sides for shade and wind protection. The animals will help fertilize, of course, and then they're going to eat the sides of those trees and get healthy themselves. Yeah. Yeah, for
Well,
sure.
I think we're done. So if you need to go, feel free. But
Yeah.
we don't have any. I don't think we have anywhere. We're happy to do questions. We can stay and answer publicly or come visit us or whatever. So thanks y'all so much. Yeah. Yeah.